Um, Today's daf is daf Nun Aleph, and we're going to start in the last two lines of Nun Amud Beis, which quotes the Mishnah. The Mishnah had a case where somebody was outside of the city, and it was getting dark, and he realized he's not going to make it into town for Shabbos, and he recognizes or he remembers a particular point that's 2,000 am outside of the city, and he wants to make that as his Eruv, Eruv point. So he says, I'm making the root of that tree, the base of that tree, that fence, whatever it may be, as my Eruv, my Makam Shvisa, my place. Now, even though he's not there at the time, and even though he's not putting down a bread, just from knowing the place, he can name it, he can state it. That makes it his Eruv. So, and then he can walk 2,000 amma there and 2,000 amma from there into the city. And as Afnun said, it would have to be that it's a specific space in order for both of those halachas to be true. And as we saw at the end of Mem Tesam Beis and Machlokas Rav and Shmuel, whether or not he can at least go to that place. If he didn't define it, if he can at least go to that place, but not from there to the city, or he can't move from where he is. Now, here the Gemara is going to tell us the base. What's this idea that he can define a place as an Eruv, even though it's not? He doesn't put bread there, and he doesn't put, and he's not there at the beginning. So Amar Shvisasi be'ikra. He said, my Shabbos is, or my resting place, meaning my tchum is going to be at the root or the trunk of that tree. So you can go from where he's up, where he is, until the tree, 2,000 amma. And from the trunk of the tree to his house, 2,000 amma. So which tells us that from when it got dark, he can go 4,000 amma from where he is to his house. That's the Mishnah. To which the Gemara says in our Nun Aleph Amud Aleph, is where we begin today's daf, 51a. Amar Rava. Rava said, this is true if when he runs from the base, from where he is to the base of that tree, he'll make it before it gets dark. In other words, even though it says that he's traveling and it's getting dark, what it means is that he can get there by the time it got dark. So Abaye says, what are you talking about? The Mishnah specifically said that our case is that he's on the way, he's too far away, and it's getting dark. If he can actually make it there, so then he's not too far away. He's going to be within 2,000 amma of the city. So the Gemara says, so Rava responds, no, it's true that it's going to get dark. It's going to get dark before he gets home, but he knows that he can make it to the tchum of the city if he were to run. Or that it's going to get dark if he just walks normally. But he can make it to the tchum 2,000 am outside of the city if he ran. So Rava says this. When it says in our Mishnah that he can name a space and it'll be his Eruv, it'll be where Shabbos is for him, that means he can run there and make it before Shabbos comes in, before it gets dark. However, he cannot make it to his house, and even to the Tchum of Shabbos, to the tree, which is 2,000 am outside the city. He can also only make it if he makes a dash for it, but he could make it. And then that naming that place would work and then define his Shabbos place. Rabbi and Rav Yosef Rabbi and Rav Yosef were traveling together. At least the story says it like this. So Rabbi and Rav Yosef are traveling. Amalei Rabbi Rav Yosef teheshav yisaseinu tusi dikla de savil achla. So Rabbah says to Rav Yosef, let it be our Shabbos. In other words, we're going to make Shabbos, and I know of a tree, so you, Rav Yosef, will rely on me, and I will make Shabbos under that particular tree, which is a palm tree of Savilach. Or he named it a particular tree that was so laden in fruit that they paid up their taxes with it. So Rav Yosef said, I don't know which tree that is. So you don't have to know. As long as I know, you can rely on me, and I can define your techum and my techum for us together. The Tanya, as we learned, Rabbi Yossi says, Im hayu shnayim echad makir ve'echad eina makir, zeh sheina makir v'yishu shvisase l'makir. As the Brisa says, and this was seen earlier, as long as you moser shvisase, if you give over your Shabbos to the next person, he's going to define the space for both of you. You're traveling together. He knows of a place that you can that is 2,000 am out of the city, and you can define as your eruv between here and the city. That'll be he can do it even though you don't know.
Didn't he say it wrong though?
Because he said beneath,
just under the tree.
Right, but as you mentioned yesterday, the palm tree doesn't have a large canopy, and so that would be fine because you would be. It wouldn't necessarily be 7 amas from one end to the other.
Assuming that it wasn't. I mean, if it was, it was.
Correct. So he quoted it in the name of Rabbi Yossi that this brisa. However, it's not correct. This that he said in the name of Rabbi Yossi, it's not correct. It's actually just a brisa unattributed. However, since the halach is like Rabbi Yossi whenever he is in the brisa in the Mishnah, because Rabbi Yossi Nemukeima, we saw that a few days ago, and they were in this place where Rabbah was afraid Rabbi Yosef was not going to know where to go, not going to know the tchum, and he's going to say, well, I don't remember that brisa. In fact, as you remember, that Rabbi Yosef had forgotten a lot of his learning due to an illness, and Rabbah wanted him to accept that is the halacha, so he told him the brisa is in the name of Rabbi Yossi, even though it's just an unattributed brisa. But this is the halacha that if two people are traveling together, and one of them says, I know of a place that is 2,000 amma from us and 2,000 amma from the next village, city, town, or from home, and they can both rely on the one that knows to define the place, and that'll be a Tchum Shabbos. And that'll be their Shavisa, their place that they're resting for Shabbos. Now the Mishnah said, Emeina Makir, Sheina Baki, if he doesn't know, or he doesn't know how to do it, so in the end the result is going to be he can only walk 2,000 amma from where he is if he doesn't say anything, but if he does, he's going to remain with just 4 amma. So the Gemara now challenges and asks, where's this basis, the whole 2,000 amma thing, where's it come from? Hani alpayim amma, hechikasiva, where is it from? The Tani we learned, shavu ish tachtav. So now we're going to do Gzeir Shava. Gzeir Shava is where we have 2 terms that the Torah uses, and we're going to compare the terms and say, just as over there it means A, so too it means A. And even though that it's in a different context, but the term itself is going to be transferred, and that's the Gzeir Shava that we're going to be using here. And we're going to learn some of the rules of Gzeir Shava, where they apply, where they don't. Hani alpayim amma. These 2,000 amma, hechiksiva, where does it say? The Tani we learned. Shavu ish tachtav. So the Brisa teaches, based on the pasuk that says, that each person should sit where they are, meaning remain in their place. Ela Abra Amos. So Shvu Ish Tachtov tells us that you need the 4 amos, that these are the 4 amos once you leave your tchum. Remain in your place and don't leave, that's the 4 amos. Al Yetze Ish Mimikomo. It says in the Torah, a person shall not leave his place. Elu Al Paimama. It says Makomo, his place. Don't that tells us that there's 2,000 amma of your place that you cannot leave. Minola, and how do you know that it means 2,000 amma? Amar Rav Chisda Lamanu Makom Mi Makom. We learn place over here. It says Al Yetze Ishma Makomo, and a person should not leave his place. And we learn it from place over there. It says another place where it says Makom. So it says another place Makom, and that Makom is going to be 2,000 am. And that place actually doesn't say the full, it's not the full Gzeir Shabbat. Makom minisa. And it says the place where it says Makom, it also says Nisa, runaway. And we learn it from a place of Nisa where it says to run away. Vanisa minisa. Vanisa migvul. And the place where it says to run away, it also says a border. Ugvul migvul. And there's another place in the Torah that says that the border has to be 2,000 am. Gvul, we learn from Chutz, where it says Chutz outside of the city is going to be 2,000 am. The Chutz t'chsiv u'midoisam mechutz le'ir es pa'as kedma alpayim am. It says in the Levium cities that you're going to have 2,000 amma outside of the city that's going to be left fallow. It's not going to be left as a border outside of the city. So here's, it says over here, Al Yetze Ish Mimkomo. Don't go out from your place. And it says in regards to the refuge cities that a manslaughter has to run to, it says, V'samti l'cha makom asher yanus shama. I will make a place for you that, so the place is the second comparison, and that place, it says Yanus Shama, that you're going to run there. So now we know that the place is going to be a place that you're going to run to. And that place, we're going to learn from the fact that you run to it, we're going to learn that it's a place that has 2,000 amma outside of the city. So too, this place that you cannot leave also is going to have your place, your city, and it's going to have 2,000 amma out of it. Now, how do I know that it's going to have 2,000 amma out of it? Because there it says you're going to have a place to run to escape to. Mala, and it says over there, escape, and it says by the borders, it says Migvul ir miklotay ashayanus, from the border of the city that he will run to. It says it cannot go out. The manslaughter may not leave the city. It says so you can't go out of the border of that city. So now we know that the place he's running to has a border. And we know that these were Levium cities. And it says over there, if he will go out michutz legvul, outside of the border, that he has to leave the border of the city in order for him to be considered having left. And how big is that border? And it says over there, and you will measure outside of the city 2,000 amma. So working backwards, it says in the Levium city you will have outside of the city 2,000 amma, and it says in regards to the manslaughter, that he may not leave the outside of the city, outside of the border of the city. Outside of the border is the 2,000 amma. We learn that because it says outside of the city is 2,000 amma, and it says the outside the border of the city outside, and then working backwards, it says he may not leave the border of the city, which tells me not only the boundary but the 2,000 amma, and that's called his makom, the place that Hashem sets for you. And over here it says don't leave your makom, so we know that the makom is the 2,000 amma outside of the city. V'neilif mikir ha'ir v'chutza. Elef amma. So why you say it's 2,000 amma? Maybe it's 1,000 amma because it says that from the wall of the city and outside it, you will make 1,000 amma, 1,000 amma fallow, and then another 1,000 amma can be planted, but it cannot be houses. It has to be trees or just plants. Dane chutz michutz vein dane chutz michutza. Where it says because there is a distinction. There it says chutza, outside of her, or outward. And in regards to the 2,000 amma, that are fallow, meaning that you're not going to build there, that 2,000 amma border or building non-inhabitants place, there it says chutz, so it's a more exact comparison of the term. So Gemara says, that shouldn't be enough of a distinction because we know as long as it means the same thing, you can make a word comparison. Hatanya Dever Rabbi Shmuel. We learned in the Academy of Rabbi Shmuel. This comes up in Shas many times. In regards to the size expansion of a tzaras in the garment and in a house, the comparison is made in regards to when that expansion or even the same size tzaras can be defined as a tzaras in regards to when it counts as a tzaras, which we're going to learn from V'shava Kohen, the Kohen will come back, or Uba HaKohen, the Kohen will come to tell us that it means when the Kohen comes. So if it happened earlier in the week, the house is closed for a week. If the tzaras comes, it doesn't make a difference. As long as when the Kohen comes, it's not going to be there anymore. Or even if it didn't expand, but it's when the Kohen comes, it's gonna count. Now, we learn that from the term V'shava Kohen Abayikam, we're comparing the two times. Now, even though the Torah expresses it a little differently, the meaning is the same. V'shava Kohen, the Kohen returns. Uba Kohen, the Kohen comes. All mean he comes. Nevertheless, even though the term is different, it's going to count as a good comparison. So over here also, who cares that it says chutz outside the city or chutza outward of the city? It's the same meaning, and therefore it should still be a good comparison. So maybe the Gemara says hani mili midi de damila. That's only true. We're going to look for a term that's most exact. If I don't have most exact, then I'm going to go to the less exact but the same meaning. But in our case, where there's something more exact, we learn it from the one that's more exact. So that's a general term in regards to Gzeira Shava. However, it's important to note, as we've already learned, that the Gemara has told us that the 2,000 amma limit is actually mid'Rabbanan. And mid'Oraisa, on a Torah level, it'd either be 12,000 amma or there isn't really a Tachum on a Torah level. So even though usually when we have a Gzeira Shava like this, it is a Torah prohibition or a Torah concept, because Gzeira Shava is one of the Midah Shatar and Dreshas Bam, and is one of the ways that we know the meaning of a mitzvah on a D'Oraisa level. It's the Torah level obligation. Here, this is going to be an asmachta, it's going to be a support for a rabbinic enactment. John, I couldn't read your question. What was your question?
It had to do with the 2,000 and whether it was 2,000 total or 2,000 per side.
2,000 per side. So the concept of not building outside of a city to keep the borders of the city the same. So that's basically like a urban development plan, right? So you have your dwellings, and outside of that you need 2,000 amma, which is essentially about a half a mile of uninhabited space. Which
right, but I guess what my question was how then is there a debate?
No, there are two. Okay, so there are two things. The 2,000 amma is split in half. Half of it just is left unattended to. You don't plant there. You don't build there. It's just fallow. The other half can be planted. It can be like homesteads or whatever, but you can't build there. So that's the 1,000 and 1,000, but it has to remain 2,000, 1,000 of which is fallow and 1,000 of which is just not buildings. Good.
It's like green space, right? There's 1,000 green space and 1,000 planted.
Correct. Now, Alpayim Amagulis. So in our Mishnah, we have two opinions. Do we say that the 2,000 amma that we have are round, which basically, if you deal with 2,000 amma, that's what you're going to have. You're going to have a circumference of 2,000 amma. It's going to be a circle, or do we say that it's actually squared? And that's the two opinions in the Mishnah, and the Gemara is going to learn that right here. So do we say a person has 2,000 amma from where they are, or they really have an additional 2/5 to a corner of that space? Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus manavshach. Well, it's Rabbi Chanina ben Antigonus who says that it's just a circle. Well, if he learns from this place that we just learned from the outside of the city, there it particularly says not only that you have 2,000 amma, but it says pa'as kedma. You have the corners as well. So outside your city, it clearly says in the Torah where you make the border of the city that you do square it. So even if your city is not exactly square, you're going to square it because it says pa'as kedma, the corners. Iles legzeir shava. And if he doesn't say that we compare it to the city, so alpayim amma minole. So where's this 2,000 amma from? So loyal mislik zeir shava says no. Of course, we compare it to the city like we just explained, and therefore you have the 2,000 amma limit. You can only go your place. You cannot go outside of it more than 2,000 amma. V'shayni hachad hamakra ze yiyelachem migroshe ha'arim l'ze'atan es apeyos v'yatan es apeyos l'shev se Shabbos. However, over there by the borders of the city, it says ze yiyelachem. This shall be for you the borders of the city. Now, the fields outside of the city. And the zeh, what's it coming to limit? This will be the borders of the city or the fields outside the city to tell you that the 2,000 amma and its corners are only going to be for a city. For a person in Shabbos is only going to have his space, which is 2,000 amma wherever he's facing. However, for the border of the city, you are also going to give it its corners. V'Rabbanan, and the Rabbanan say, Tanya Chananya, Aimer, Kazeh yeh kol shev se Shabbos. Not zeh, but kozeh, like this. This is also for Shabbos that you give it pa'as, you give it the corners to tell you that not only you have this circle around him, but you have the corners in the corner directions. Amar Rav Acha bar Yaakov, Hamaver dalal ramas b'shos harabas in a chayim v'shama v'him v'lachsina. So now, based on this, Rabbi Eliezer bar Yaakov says we have a new idea that since when we said that it's not only your space is not only the 4 amas, but it also has the corners that he has in the corners of his space for Shabbos. So it's not only for the Techum, for the 2,000 amma outside the city that you're supposed to stay in your place, but it's also for carrying in a public domain. And when you carry in a public domain, if you carry 4 amos, then it would have to be that you're carrying directly forward. But if you carry off to an angle, then you have really 4 amos plus another amma and 3/5, which is the hypotenuse. You're going to have your angle to the corner, which you're allowed in a corner. Now, who tells you which way to make the square? So essentially, in order to transgress carrying in a public domain, you're always going to have to carry not 4 amos, but 5 3/5 amma, which is going to give you 4 amos in any square. Amar Papa, so Rav Papa said, Badik lan Rava Amud B'Shus Rabim Gavoa Yud V'Rachav Dalid Tzarech Him Alach Soinon Olay. Rava challenged us with this question. Well, based on that, when you need, when you have 4 amos of a space, 10 tefachim high, and 4 amos by 4 amos, do you need the corners as well? Isn't this Rab Chanania who says in order to carry, you need to carry 5 and 3/5? Otherwise, you haven't transgressed because maybe you're walking to the corner. All halachas of Shabbos require the corners as well. And it says indeed that is the halacha that you're always going to need the corners. And so if it's a circle, 4 amos is not going to be enough, because in order to transgress carrying, you would have to have that you carried the corner as well, because all halachas of Shabbos have not only themselves, but also the angle of the hypotenuse, the angle, the corner that with the additional 1 3/5 that the corner gives you. The Mishnah concluded with a halacha that applies to just a generalization. We have that anybody can have an eruv with their feet, or only somebody, or only a poor person who can't afford a piece of bread, but everybody else would have to put a piece of bread. This machlokes Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Yehuda. So what's going on here? So as the real translation of ani is a poor person, or an usher, a rich person. But as we've explained in the Mishnah and previously when this came up, it doesn't mean a poor person. It means someone who can't put bread there versus somebody who can put bread there. So if they have bread to put down there, they can. So who can't put bread there? So the Gemara is going to say, if it's Friday, Erev Shabbos, everybody, even a poor person, has a meal for Shabbos. If not, the city is going to provide that for him. So everybody has a piece of bread for Shabbos. So who can't put a bread down for Shabbos outside of the city? Must be a traveler. And so an ani over here is going to be someone who actually doesn't have the ability to put a bread down. Amar Rav Nachman. So Rav Nachman said this machlokas in the Mishnah of someone who can make an eruv by being there themselves versus putting down food. This machlokas b'mkomi is when the person says, "My place." That means that the person has a place. He's not a traveler, and he's going to make an eruv at his place. And he says, "Wherever I am is my Shabbos," and therefore he wants to make an eruv, even though he could essentially put food down. He wants to make my place the eruv. The Rab Meir Savar Iker Eruv Papas. The Rab Meir says the reason he cannot make such an eruv is because you have to have a meal, and since you can make a meal, you have to make it with a meal. Now we turn to Nun Aleph Amud Beis. Ani hu de'akila rabbanan alavei, and it's only a poor person, which we said is somebody who cannot put bread there. That's why he can do it by himself, by standing there. And that means somebody who's traveling and doesn't have bread to put down. So therefore, The Chachamim said you can say, my place where I am now is my Eruv, and I'm going to continue into the city. And it's because he doesn't know of a tree that he can say later to go to. So he's saying, my place is my Shabbos. But Aval Ashir, but somebody who can actually put down bread, meaning he's not a traveler. He's at home, or he has bread with him. So for somebody like that, he cannot say my place is my Eruv. He has to actually designate the meal and put a meal down, and that's going to be what defines Eruv. So according to Rabbi Meir, the basis of Eruv is a meal, and he has to put it down. Rabbi Yehuda in our Mishnah, the reason why he says that anybody can put an Eruv down, can go there, make an Eruv by his foot, meaning where he's standing, where his place is. Ikur Eruv b'regel echad. A person can make an Eruv by his foot, meaning by where he's standing, because that is the main way of an Eruv, saying this is my place for Shabbos. And regardless of whether he has a meal that he can put down there or not, it makes no difference. Since he himself is standing there, he can define that as his Shabbos space. And it doesn't, so therefore it doesn't make a difference if he's home and he could bring bread there or not. It's a good Eruv. But Aval b'makam pleini, Rabbi Yehuda is saying, if he's not there and he's not putting down bread, or rather he recognizes a place later where he could get to, and he says, look, I'm still 4,000 amma away from the city, but I know of a place 2,000 amma from the city, and I want that to be my place. So not makomi, my place here, but makom ploni, a farther away place. That's the place I want. There, divrei hakol ani in asherla. That would only work for a traveler, someone who can't move himself there and can't put a bread there, and therefore it's going to count as a good Eruv on account of that. He would either, as Rabbi said earlier, would have to make a mad dash to get there before sunset, but he knows of the place, so even though he didn't put a bread down, and even though he's not there, it's going to be a good Eruv, and everybody agrees to that. But only on account of that he can't make it. And this is what we said this in our Mishnah. It says V'zehu sha'amru. In our Mishnah it says that this is what we said, that a poor person can make an Eruv with his feet. This is Rabbi Meir, who says that only a poor person can make the Eruv with his feet. Only on account of that, only a poor person can make an Eruv without bread, meaning only a traveler can say, my place here is my Eruv. And this according to Rabbi Meir. And what's it talking about? Why can't he say that particular place, the root of that tree or that gate is going to be my Eruv? It's somebody who doesn't know of the place or doesn't know the halacha that he can make an Eruv at a distance by just knowing of the space. So therefore, he didn't make the Eruv, and for him, his current place is going to be a good Eruv, and he can walk 2,000 amma.
When we began the Masechta, it was pretty clear, or not beginning of the Masechta, but the beginning of the sugi of Tchum Shabbos.
Yeah, last paragraph.
It was pretty clear that it was about putting a meals there. I mean, that was the main thrust of it, was putting a meal there. It seems like the Gemara has taken a complete turn away and said, it doesn't have to be a meal. It's just perfectly fine without a meal. And so I'm just curious, why did it take so? I mean, why would I'm not finding like a contradiction. I'm interested why did the Gemara need to develop the whole thing of a meal in order for at the end to say you don't really need a meal?
No, Rabbi Yehuda is the one that says you don't need a meal. Rabbi Meir says you absolutely need a meal, right?
Yeah.
Rabbi Meir says you do need a meal. Stamish no Rabbi Meir. An unattributed Mishnah is going to be Rabbi Meir. It's not a surprise that earlier we learned Mishnayos that concur with Rabbi Meir that you need a meal. But however, everybody agrees that you can have a meal. But the Gemara brought this earlier as well. And the question was, do you need a meal? Or is a meal a replacement for being there myself? and the early Mishnah says that you could use a meal, meaning the only thing that's new here is that a traveler who's not there himself and doesn't have a meal, but has the intent, meaning they know where they're going and they can define it. That's the chiddush really of this Mishnah. That part is new. That even if I'm not there and I don't have a meal, I can define it by knowledge of a specific place. That's the chiddush of this Mishnah, and that's true only for a traveler. And that's according to Hanania. That's the chiddush of what's going on here. And everybody would agree that for someone like that, you don't need a meal, you don't need to be there. Just knowing the place and defining it is going to be sufficient to make your eruv.
But if I'm in my house, and I know that on Shabbos I need to go to the next town, and I need an eruv to get there. I can't use this, or I could use this.
No. When you're at home, you cannot just say, I'm making the tree 2,000 amma from here in eruv. For sure not. Rabbi Meir says you have to put a meal there. Rabbi Yehuda says you can either put a meal there, or ideally you can even go there at the onset of Shabbos and be there, and by being there you'll make the eruv. The only time that you can define it is if you're outside of the city and you're traveling back, and you can't really put bread down there because you don't necessarily have bread with you, and you're not really there yet because you would have to make a mad dash to get there. So therefore, you can define it even though you're not there. But if you're home, sitting on your couch, then you absolutely, like we saw at the beginning and the early part of the Masechta, you have to put a meal there. You have to send somebody, say, please take this bread and put it down there, and that's going to be my eruv, and the eruv has to be in the place you want to sit, right? All the sugyas of where the eruv meal is going to be are about the person who's home and wants to make an eruv to leave his place. Here, what we're getting is somebody who's outside of the city and is trying to make it into the city on time, and he's not going to make it before sunset. And it's a problem because Shabbos is going to come and he's going to be outside of the city, and he may even be more than 2,000 amma unless he makes a mad dash to the 2,000 amma. So there he can designate a place and say, look, I know of that tree's our place. And that's the chiddush here. Okay?
Mm-hmm. John asked something, I think.
Yochanan, what was the question? Yonason. John.
It was just, it seems, I guess it's kind of like Michael's saying, it seems out of the blue that all of a sudden intent is sufficient.
Right. That's a new thing that came up here. We did not see that yet. That's because up until now we were talking about, Michael's case, which was that you're home and you're trying to extend your boundary outside of the city. So for that, you have to put a meal down, or you have to be there yourself. Here, where then is something else, where somebody's outside of the borders trying to make it in. For that, it's sufficient to have intent.
Right, but it just seems like you're artificially extending beyond a distance that is
correct,
has been defined.
Correct. That as long as you can define it, as long as you can designate the space, it's a space that is defined, and it's a 4 amos that's defined. As long as you did that, so then that gives you the place. And as Rava said at the beginning of the daf today, and you can actually make it there if you worked at it. It's just simply it's hard, but if you just dropped everything and ran like you needed to, you would make it there before nightfall.
So even if it's 3,000 almost instead of 2,000,
because you could make it there.
Yeah. Okay.
What are we up to? All right. Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Chisda Amar. However, Rabbi Yehuda and Rabbi Chisda, they say machlokas b'makom ploni. No, the machlokas in our Mishnah of whether you need to put down a meal or not is in this case where he's outside of the city and trying to define a distance. The Rabbi Meir savar ani in asher lo. Rabbi Meir says only a traveler can do this. Rabbi Yehuda savar echad ani v'echad asher. And Rabbi Yehuda says no. Rabbi Yehuda says that even somebody who has bread and could put it down there, meaning even somebody that's at home, is allowed to put down, is allowed to designate a place. But if I'm defining my place itself where I am, even Rabbi Meir would agree that's the main way of making an Eruv. I'm defining my place where I am. That, of course, is going to be the main. And this that it said in the Mishnah, that for this we said that you can be lenient. Man katani la Rabbi Meir. It's Rabbi Meir. And it's going on this part. It's not going on somebody who doesn't know the halacha, but it's going on somebody who is traveling and it's getting dark. That the bread is only to be lenient on somebody that doesn't want to have to be there, but somebody that's dark and it can designate a place. There, Rabbi Meir says that he doesn't have to be there, but generally, if he could be there and is there, even if he has no bread, it's going to be sufficient. And this that we said that the bread is a leniency. Everybody says that the bread is a leniency because everybody agrees that if you could be there personally, that is the main way. Just that if you don't want to be there and you want to send bread instead, that's going to work as well. Tanika was Seder Rav Nachman. So we have a brisa like Rav Nachman who says that no, that everybody agrees that the designating a place is for a traveler, and that the machlokas is on whether I'm there myself, but I could bring bread, and I'm living at home, whether that's sufficient. Both an ani or usher, meaning somebody who could put bread or can't put bread down, are going to put that can make bread, meaning a poor person or not, whether he's poor or rich, is going to be able to put bread down, and the eruv is going to work for him. And that the person shouldn't go outside of a city to the edge of the Tchum and say where I am is my eruv. That's not a good way to do it, but rather he should put out a bread, regardless of whether he's wealthy or not. Because Rabbi Meir says that the making an eruv by regel, meaning where I am in my place, where I'm standing, is only for someone who's outside of the city and doesn't have the ability to make it in. Meaning anybody that's home and has bread, regardless of whether they're wealthy or not, that's considered wealthy. You have bread to put down, you must put the bread down. It's only if you don't have bread with you, meaning you're traveling and you're coming into town and you're not making it before nightfall, you can say my place is my eruv, this is my Shabbos, and therefore I have 2,000 amma to get to the city. However, Rabbi Yehuda says no. If where you are, everybody, regardless of whether you have bread or not, rich or poor, you there's no greater way of defining your space for Shabbos than you being there. And therefore, even someone who has bread and is home can go out of the city without bread, define his space by saying, this is my space for Shabbos. And that is the main Eruv. However, and it's only that the Chachamim allow a person to be lenient and make an Eruv for himself by sending it with his child, with his servant, and say, hey, take this bread for me. So this is clearly like Rabbi Yehuda, like Rabbi Nachman, that Rabbi Yehuda is saying that the main way of Eruv is where you are, and bread is just a leniency for somebody that can. And Rabbi Meir says, no, that only for somebody who's traveling, they can use their place as an Eruv. But if you're home, so you have food, you have to put the bread down, and that's the main way of making an Eruv. Tomorrow we'll